Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to welcome you to this Echelon training on fall protection. We will get started here and we'll talk about the fall protection being a complete area of having to do with slips, trips, and falls, as well as fall from height. And we'll talk about how that can impact an organization. Nearly 25% of all serious disabling work injuries are a result from slip and fall or falling. There's 300,000 disabling injuries. It's second only to motor vehicles. And we've spent some time already talking about motor vehicle accidents, and that's why it's number one on the list as the cause of death. Number two is a fall. So that's why we're spending so much time on this today. They're very expensive, very disruptive, and there's usually quite a bit of time away from work related to those. What we're going to cover today is the types of falls and how to prevent those falls. And we're going to cover how to prevent trips. And we're also going to cover some ladder material. I don't know, we're not going to get too far into that. Falling from a ladder is something we need to cover today, but there is a whole course just based on the proper use of a ladder, and we'll get into that a little bit. Falls from equipment, falls from loading docks, from stairs, and we'll talk a little bit more about safety footwear and why that's so important. The types of falls falling on the same level is just how it sounds. They generally happen a little more often where you either trip or you slip, fall on the same level of surface that you're walking on. The elevated falls are more like falling down a set of stairs, or falling from a ladder, or falling off a building, which these are, less than 60% of these types of falls are less than 10 feet. We're going to get into some statistics here in a minute and why that's important. This is usually caused, when you have slips are generally caused, of course, by slippery surface. There's two types of slips for the front foot, and that means when you're stepping forward, you have one foot in front of the other. That one slips or the back one slips. Obviously, if you're stepping forward, you're putting more pressure on the heel of your safety footwear, or if you're the back foot or the foot that's trailing behind is generally the pressure on the foot is on the front part. Now, how do you prevent slips? Generally, just try to keep the walking surface dry. We know that's not very earth-shattering, but I'll tell you, keeping the walking surface dry is a struggle that every employer will deal with. If you're out at a construction site, it's even more troublesome because you don't have any control over the walking surfaces in most set of circumstances. You're there at a general contractor's preference, and you're doing work for a work site. Sometimes they have wet walking surface. You can't do anything about it. So hopefully in our own facilities, we use non-skid strips, you use floor coatings of some sort. We raise or elevate the area with a drill or a grate so that the liquids can drain through. We do all kinds of things to try to prevent slips. Preventing through slip-resistant footwear is also a good point to make. Pleated soft rubber soles are going to go a long way to keep a person from slipping. Biggest issue I see is completely worn out and worn footwear where the sole has been worn down where it's flat and no longer slip resistant. That tends to be more of a problem these days. You work real hard to make sure that the employees are wearing their safety footwear, and what you didn't look at was the bottom of them where they're worn completely flat and they're really not doing anything for you to stop the slips. So take a look at the bottom of the footwear every once in a while and talk to your employees about that. Trips usually, where you strike an object, it can be as little as 3/8 of an inch rise, and a walkway can do it. Generally, more often, it's objects in the walkway where you've let it collect. You fail to pick it up or clean it up or put it away. Step and fall occurs when your front foot lands on some surface lower than expected. This has happened to me in the dark, walking from a building where it's been light. You're letting your eyes adjust and you step off a curb. You are not expecting that to be much lower, and you step off of that, and it can be very jarring, and oftentimes it causes a fall. Fall will result from stepping forward or stepping down. Um, where these types of situations occur where it's just not the level you thought it was. Let's talk about some of the main causes of injuries that happen from slip, trips, and falls. And that's just, these causes are just inadequate housekeeping. Housekeeping can be the area that you're working in, but it can also be sidewalks or loading docks or anything else on the outside of your building. Let's say you've got a back door where all employees come in, and it is adjacent to a more vacant area behind you, and the weeds and the debris and the trash and the dirt blow up in that area. That needs to be routinely cleaned out. That's a lack of housekeeping. Also, when you drive for a living, and you do quite a bit of driving, keep the floor of your vehicle cleaned out. This can cause, especially in taller vehicles, especially your commercial rigs, you can completely fall out of the cab of the truck where your feet get tangled up in all the debris that's on the floor. So keep all this stuff, housekeeping, keep it cleaned up, and keep it picked up so that you don't have this problem. Inadequate lighting. Oftentimes this is on the outside of buildings during early morning or late hours. It's also during the times when inside a building, when no one else is there and maybe you have some automatic lights that go out, it can kind of catch you off guard and you might have an injury from something in that area. So watch your lighting. Carrying objects that obstruct your vision is a real big problem. Carrying a big old box in front of you while you're walking along, you can't see the floor. That is a problem. Put it on the dolly, pull it behind you, do something else. Just don't walk with it in front of you. Walking too fast can be an issue. It's not very common though. Distractions and not watching where you're walking. Let's say sunglasses when you walk from the light into the dark area is a big issue. Those of us that have progressive lenses or bifocals, you fail to see a drop off or a step up. That is of course, a concern. Now let's talk about the two kinds that we've talked about so far are falls on the same level and falling to a lower level or falling to a different level. Here's some statistics. About 146 people, and these are workers. This is not just a statistic for all Americans. This is just workers. 146 workers died this last year just from falling on the same level. That's just walking along, getting your feet tangled up and falling forward or falling backwards and hitting your head is the most likely cause of the fatality. When falling to a lower level, you add a little height to it. 711 workers died this in 2019, the latest statistics I have from National Safety Council here. 48,000 people were injured. That's a lot of people. These are workers that have been maimed or injured or killed in the line of duty just because they're not paying attention while they are working and falling. Let's talk about ladders. Falls from ladders are a problem. Generally speaking, you'll see people that will step off of a ladder and twist their knee, do some things. They just get in a hurry and don't take their time going up and going down the ladder, or in this case, stepping above the area that it's supposed to be, and the ladder becomes unstable. Only, the top 3 rungs on a straight ladder or the top 2 steps on an A-frame ladder should never be used for standing. Make sure, and if you have to, paint them red, paint them yellow, do something, tell people to stay off of those, tell your employees. Use only ANSI approved ladders. There are some ladders for sale that don't meet ANSI standards, and especially ANSI standards for the weight of the particular employee that you're asking to walk up a ladder or work from a ladder, plus the materials they have thrown over their shoulder or trying to carry up with them. You add all that weight together, and sometimes it exceeds the ANSI approved standards. And got to watch out for those overhead lines or the lines coming out of a building when you're putting a ladder up. Make sure you don't get it close to electricity, especially those metal ladders and the ones that are not rated for electrical work. For straight ladders, each 4 foot of rise on the ladder should base out of 1 foot. So if it's 4 foot tall, should be out 1 foot. If it's 8 feet tall, should be out 2 feet from the wall. This is a straight ladder. Ladders must be absolutely stable. Make sure those aren't wobbling around on you. Make sure your employees have the ability to stabilize the ladder and be trained in how to do that. Ladders must be inspected. And this is a bigger problem for those of you that use a lot of ladders. Failure to inspect the problem. I recommend that they get inspected before every job, and actually producing a document that can be gone back and looked at, see if the employee looked at all the probable issues that could be with ladders. Again, this is training for another time. There's a lot more involved in inspecting a ladder than just kind of glancing at it. There's a lot more you got to look at. Use heeled shoes or safety footwear while you're climbing a ladder. That heel should go on the outside of the ladder. The rung that you're going to be standing on should go right up against the heel. The heel itself should not be on the ladder. And that just keeps your foot from slipping forward and slipping through the ladder. Face the ladder while climbing. The belt buckle should stay between the 2 vertical rails of a ladder. If an employee is working from a ladder and their belt buckle is the center part of their body is extending out or beyond this area of the ladder, that means I need to get down and move that ladder or provide a different working apparatus, maybe some kind of other devices in order to stand on if you have to move laterally or sideways more than what a ladder is capable of doing. So just keep that belt buckle in between the 2 vertical areas of that ladder, and you'll be in great shape. A couple of examples of what not to do. These are 3 guys working. They've actually placed this ladder. This is a straight ladder on top of a vehicle that's parked in the parking lot, and they're standing on it. It's certainly way too flat. It's the rise is not forever 4 foot up, 1 foot away from the wall. That is certainly not the right ratio there. And then you got an employee standing in the middle of it trying to stabilize the ladder, which is probably, you see the ladder is bending here. There's problems. Everything they're doing here is wrong. Nobody's tied off. There's no fall protection. There's no nothing. It's very, very, very dangerous situation. This guy had the right idea. He's walking up a ladder, got his extension ladder, got up there, and then stepped off onto a windowsill to do the work. Maybe scaffolding would have been a better choice for this, but what you'll find is employees will get a little creative when they don't have the right equipment. So be sure that your pre-trip checklist includes taking the right equipment to get the job done right. Make sure they have the right ladders, they have the right scaffolding, they have the right ability and training to do the job with the right piece of equipment. You won't run into this near as often. Okay, let's talk about falls from equipment. This is equipment that's being used on a job site. Falls from the equipment generally are caused by a couple of things here. One is having extra riders on this piece of equipment. If it's got one seat, it can only have one passenger, and that's the driver. So nobody else should be allowed to ride on it. Now, the funny thing is, this arises all the time. Employees falling off, getting hurt, and come to find out they were hanging onto the side, and they were tired and they didn't want to walk back, so they all jump on the side of a piece of equipment headed that way, and they all hang off of it, and somebody falls and gets hurt. The safest way is just no riders. Make sure this is discussed, this is the process, this is the policy. Many injuries occur due to slippery metal steps, and the steps are generally welded, fixed to the sides of these pieces of equipment. Sometimes that can be helped with slippery metal. You can put some type of slip resistant material on there, maybe replace the expanded metal. A shop could do that for you, get it where it's a lot less slippery, especially on older equipment. You see this. And make sure the employees are gripping very tightly with both hands, and we do the 3-point contact system. And that's what this page is about. 3-point contact is exactly that. 3 of your 4 limbs are in contact with the object that you're climbing at all times. The do's: slow down, use a little extra caution, especially in bad weather. Bad weather, you have things stuck to your feet, your hands are cold, maybe you're wearing gloves where you're normally not wearing gloves. This can be all kinds of issues in bad weather. Why you've got to slow down just a little bit getting on and getting off equipment. Get a firm grip. For larger vehicles, that's interpreted here to mean tall vehicles where you have to climb up a couple of steps to get in. Always exit and enter your vehicle facing the cab. Never turn around and walk down, walk out facing the outside of the vehicle. That is not the way those are intended to be used. What you're supposed to do here is utilize the mounting and dismounting steps and running boards and traction strips that are provided. Don't use other parts of the vehicle. Look for obstacles on the ground while you're getting out. Stepping in a hole and twisting the knee or twisting an ankle is a problem while you're getting on and off equipment. Of course, wearing the right kind of shoes helps with that. Clean your shoes off, get the mud and grease and whatever off the bottom of them. Inspect the handholds and ladders. This should be part of a routine inspection of your vehicle. Look for handholds, ladder rungs, that sort of thing that are completely worn out, broken, or missing. I have walked up to equipment and the bottom step has been ripped off at some point and had never been replaced. So that is a problem. Only climb on and off equipment that is stationary, never while it's moving. Don't never carry anything with your free hand while mounting or dismounting a piece of equipment. If you have the ability, throw it over your shoulder. Provide a strap, string it over your shoulder, whatever, or just reach up in there and throw it up into the cab, and then you crawl up in the cab. That's generally the way most companies do this. Don't rush to climb out of the vehicle. After sitting for a long period of time, you can get really stiff and sore and you'll strain something. So never jump out of equipment or vehicles, or especially the temptation is there on flatbed trailers or trailers that they're only 12 to 14 inches off the ground. Sometimes they are a lot taller than that, but the temptation is the lower they are and the flatter they are, people just want to jump off, and don't do that. Causes severe twisting of ankles, injury to the feet, and of course blown knees. Don't use the tires, the wheel hubs, machine tracks, and that sort of thing as a step surface. Use the ladder that's provided on the side of it. Do not use door frames, door edges, door handles, because those things move on you while you're trying to hang on to them, getting in and out of the cab. Let's talk about falls from loading docks. Loading docks are becoming This last year in 2020, when not a lot of traffic and not a lot of stuff getting delivered, more so now. And I have a feeling over the next couple of years, you're going to have more deliveries to your facility. Metal dot plates can get very slippery as they get worn. The edge of the plates can actually stick up a little bit and cause trips. Make sure you turn in anything like that and let somebody know about it. Make sure you keep proper housekeeping. All kinds of material blows up there or comes out of the truck you're trying to unload. Sometimes it's worth putting skid-resistant surface material down there. It's always good to mark the edges, drop-offs, and that sort of thing with slip-resistant paint. That's the paint that has the grip in it. The grip can keep it from letting you slip off into the parking lot or the parking area. Okay, falls on stairs. Usually the biggest issue on stairs is the first step at the top of the stairs and the last step at the bottom, or depending on which way you're going, the first step at the bottom and the last step at the top. And that's somebody just losing track of where they're at and missing the last step. Usually when you hear about somebody falling on stairs, it's either at the very top or at the very bottom. Keep the steps free, of course, of material. Somebody sees something laying on there, they need to be picking it up, but avoid carrying bulky or heavy objects that obscure your vision, because it's really hard to see those steps when you're carrying a large object directly in front of you. Use the freight elevator, use a lift, use something to get that larger item upstairs rather than trying to carry it up the stairs, unless you have 2 or 3 people that can help you and try to prevent you from falling. Additional fall prevention steps. This is getting in a little bit into fall protection from heights, and that is its own class that is being taught. And I will tell you that to do fall prevention correctly, if you're on the roof, using tie-offs and using all the tie-off and protective lanyards and safety belts and harnesses and all that stuff takes hours of training and takes a lot of time. I'm not going to get too far into this, but just know that if you go up at a height of more than 4 to 5 feet, OSHA says something like 6 feet, but I would make it even lower than that. You must have some kind of lanyard or safety belt or harness if you're up on a flat surface. Change your warning signs out. Make sure that it's warned on the inside of the doorways leading out into these areas, on rooftops, that you must be tied off to go out there. Very scary situation to fall off a tall building, and anything over 10 feet is generally fatal when it happens. So these lanyards, these safety belts and safety harnesses are extremely important. They are also the item that is mostly seen from a roadway by some kind of safety agency such as OSHA. Driving down the road to see you up there on the roof without wearing your lanyard and you're not tied off, they're going to come inspect the entire job site. So I would be very, very careful about wearing those. Safety footwear. Safety footwear has 3 main types of protection: slip resistant soles and heels. Again, that will only work if they're not worn completely out on the bottom, where it touches the surface where you're walking. They could be crush resistant to toe, which means either a steel toe or a composite toe. Depending on the application, there's no difference in the weight of the boot anymore. Both are very comfortable. There's no reason not to wear a crush resistant toe in a safety footwear. And of course, ankle support, where it can be strapped up. The best support you see is a 4 to 6 inch top on a boot where you can tie it off and make it a very good support for your ankle. Always use ANSI approved work shoes, and all you got to do is flip the tongue of the boot out or shoe and look on the back side of it And if it meets ANSI approved standards, it will be printed in there with ANSI and a number. And that number means that it meets ANSI standards, which is safety standards. ANSI is a safety standards company, and they provide all the safety standards for personal protective equipment, such as safety footwear. So softer soles are for slippery indoor conditions. You'll see these being real spongy, real soft, especially for super slippery, and those are the cases usually for like cooks back in a cooking area where the surface is always got oil and water on the floor, or on a factory floor or other floors where there's a lot of water, a lot of oil, lots of different environments like that. In wet environments, and wet environments only, should have some kind of waterproof boot of some sort. When you mix wet environments with chemicals, oils or greases, such as chemicals like pesticides, herbicides, anything that's in that could be caustic, you must wear a PVC boot. And oftentimes the wrong size of PVC boot can actually increase the chances of you falling. So these have to be properly fitted. So what should I remember? This is wrapping this up, okay? The regularly inspect the walking areas to identify slip, trip, and fall hazards. This is an issue that is common throughout all the industries, is a lack of inspecting the surfaces and spending a little bit of time when you first get to a location, making sure you know what the walking surfaces look like and you know where the problems could be. Prioritize your housekeeping and clean up spills immediately, leaks and spills, of course. Be sure you always have good light and nothing is blocking your view of your path. This is why it's important if you're going to be carrying materials into a facility, especially in a facility that's not yours. Walk the path first. Make sure that you have good lighting and nothing is blocking your view before you come back, get the material, and carry it through that area. Walking the path first will solve a lot of your problems about tripping and slipping and falling while you're carrying materials. Follow all precautions when using equipment. Oftentimes this equipment has signs on it that tell you where the areas are that are slippery, and you don't want to fall off equipment. If you see a hazard, correct it. If you see something, say something. Say something to somebody there at Echelon. Make sure they know what's going on. Always wear proper personal protective equipment. That's PPE on this slide, especially proper footwear. Make sure that it's not worn out on the bottom. Report any injuries immediately to Echelon Construction so that they can prevent future accidents. And my name is Jim Smith. I'm with Heritage Risk Management. I can always be emailed and contacted for further information on this subject. Of course, you have folks there at your facility and your supervisors are capable of answering your questions. So just let me know.